You're listening to the Night Demon Network. Go to nightdemon.net/subscriber to unlock more exclusive content.
Hello and welcome to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. I'm your host Nesbit. Curse of the Damned is 10 years old, and today we are celebrating the anniversary of Night Demon's first studio full-length album. We're going to get into the story of the album that never was, a full album that was recorded and mixed and then shelved. This is the story of Run for Your Life.
So, Run for Your Life album. Yeah, album. Minus a couple of tracks that ended up being on Curse. So this was the original, these were the original sessions for what turned out to be the Curse of the Damned album.
You know, we spent a lot of time making that the record that was not to be, but it's the best demo you've ever heard. Y'all, I kind of put it that way.
So as far as I understand it, Run for Your Life was the original takes of what was supposed to be the first album.
As Dustin entered the band in the fall of 2013, we pretty much went right into the studio to start recording what would become the Curse of the Damned album. At the time, it was titled Run for Your Life.
Basically, the guys came to me. They had been working with John on getting these songs up and ready. And at some point, they came to the decision that his abilities just weren't up to par for what they were trying to do with this next record, expanding the band's sound a bit from the EP. So the question was brought up about bringing Dusty on board. At that point, he had been in the band New Liberty with me for a few years, and things were kind of on the rocks with that band and fizzling a bit. So, I think he just took the opportunity to jump at that and to get some fresh, something new going for him, himself.
When I quit New Liberty, Armand was the guitar player, and, I would say that there was a little bit of, negative vibe when it came to me with that band. I was dating Armand's sister at the time, so obviously we were around each other either way. And we always were, I would say, close. But there's been rifts here and there with the way that, things worked out here and there or whatever. So I'm sure that he was a little bitter that, I'd quit the band and then, I'm like, hey, I'm going to join Night Demon. I'm going to be in Jarvis and Brent's band now.
So he started jamming with the guys, learning the songs. I think they had most of the stuff already written at that point. So he came in to refine them, and, the difference in the playing and the sound is undeniable. Dustin's one of the best drummers I've ever worked with in my career. I've never, worked with anybody that's had a snare hand like that fucking guy. There's a reason he fucking ended up with some carpal tunnel syndrome, because he fucking bashes the shit out of his drums and uses the biggest sticks possible. But anyway, that's for another time. So yeah, it brought him in, started working on the new songs, and came to me and said, hey, look, we're or he told us, the band or whatever, we want to do these tracks with Dustin, but we're not sure if he's going to be, in the band full time. It was basically like, okay, yeah, we're going to use him as like a studio drummer, session drummer kind of thing. And then we'll tour with John or whatever, So that was the initial idea for all that.
I wasn't done playing music when I quit New Liberty. I was looking for something better. I was looking for that next big thing, if it came up. I was in the area to do that. And the opportunity came up and I took it. And, picking Armand to record the Run for Your Life album was a no-brainer because he's the best production, engineer guy in town. So it was a no-brainer to use him and use his studio. And for me, being so familiar with that space and recording so many songs with him at that point, it was a very comfortable environment for me to record an album. So I think that was a major factor and key point in the comfortability and being able to execute the songs easily.
In my mind, being the engineer, the producer, I wanted to, knowing that I had him now on board, it opened up a lot more possibilities for the sonics and the drum sound. And, I really wanted to dial in everything and really make this a fucking huge record, To me, I saw that the band had a lot of potential, was great, getting a lot of ground, in the underground scene and all that. And I was looking at it as like, being the Bob Rock to the Metallica, kind of position. That's how I was looking at it. Like, I'm gonna take these guys and really push everything to the next level beyond what they've done in the past. Like the first EP was kind of like recorded as a demo. I think it was. I don't know if it wasn't even like a thing where that was going to be a band. It was just like, hey, we're going to do this as a project and put it out there, kind of as this thing. And, maybe we'll play a couple of shows, but that's about it, And then it took off and got a life of its own. So, yeah, I just really wanted to take it to the next level and really push my skills. And, the studio was only a few years old at that point. So I was really excited to really do something like this and, get a record that's going to be probably put out there and heard by a lot of people.
Lost in the dark, between heaven and hell. Inverted crosses on the wall. A fallen angel comes up to you. Says, follow me, your master calls. His name is Satan. He rules the underworld. Satan, he's coming for your soul.
Everything was recorded here at the captain's quarters, and I mixed all the songs as well. There was a lot of focus on details. Everything was done to click track and everything, and not a lot more produced.
A click track is pretty much what it sounds like. It's an audio track that is just a series of clicks. So it helps you keep tempo. Usually the drummer hears it, and you just hear. It's basically something like that, and helps keep the band on tempo and consistent throughout a song. I have plenty of experience using one. It's used in the studio. It's used live to varying extents. Depends on the band, really. I very rarely entered the studio and not used a click track, to the point that I don't know, I feel almost uncomfortable being in the studio without it. And Night Demon is pretty anti-click for the most part. Not for the most part, like, as far as, it's ever been a discussion, they've been against using it live and in the studio. And there is an argument that good music doesn't happen on what's called the grid, because a lot of bands will do, it's very common practice and the standard really these days to, record to a click track. But if you're even a hair off the click, what the audio engineer will do is they'll move every hit to be exactly perfect and on time, which people argue removes the human element, and I agree with that.
Well, industry standard for any professional drummer or any drummer trying to be a drummer is to play in time. Click track or a metronome is what majority of drummers play to. A lot of guys play to it live, because shows have to be choreographed with the lights and video screens, stuff like that. I know when we toured with Accept, they were on a click track the entire show. Everything is mapped out as far as, this song starts here. Like Wolf would have a count off in their in-ear monitors to start their songs in between. One song would end, there's a count off in their ears, the next song starts. A lot of times you'll hear bands not even count off live because the click track is in their ears telling them when to start.
Because there's a lot of adrenaline live and a lot of high energy, and it's really easy to get excited or feel the energy and just run away and play way too fast.
There's a famous joke about drummers that is like, it goes, how do you know there's a drummer knocking there's a drummer at your front door? The knocks increasingly get faster.
And you're also trying to put on as much of a visual performance as you are an audio experience as well. So you do all these, you're banging your head and you're hitting as hard as you can and just trying to be as visually exciting as you can as well. And sometimes it's hard to do that and keep perfect tempo. So when I have the click track live, I'm able to, I feel, put on more of a visual performance without sacrificing timing or anything like that. And it also, which this is a thing that some people don't like about it, is it makes it kind of the same every night. Especially when bands use backing tracks, which Night Demon doesn't do. Playing to a click allows you to have the opportunity to have a backing track. So in a world where so many bands play with backing tracks and just not fully live, at that point it becomes the same exact show every night. And I do like the consistency of, saying it's the same every night, it's going to be good. I guess there is something to be said for just kind of every night's a little different, and it's rock and roll.
For me, I didn't play with a metronome when I was learning the drums. I just played along to albums, not knowing how they kept time. I just knew that drums were supposed to sound a certain way and the snare was supposed to hit from here to here and fills happen here and blah, blah, blah. But when I got into my first band in the year 2000, I had no concept of time and I was all over the place. So the music that I recorded early on was god-awful. But it was a start for me. And I think once I joined my second band, that's when it really became, hey, you got to start to play in time. And I remember I got a pair of, they were like these isolated headphones that had a metronome in them. And I remember the first time I sat down and put the click on, I was just all over the place. I was floored by how hard it was. You know, I remember looking up at the ceiling as I'm playing the drums, trying to stay in time, and I just could not do it. And it was very, very frustrating. Once I started taking lessons at the age of 19, I took lessons from 19 to 22. And that's when I really fine-tuned my ability to play with the click track. Every time I was doing rudiments and practicing my lesson, it was to a click. So I really started to get the concept of how to play in time with it, but also how to make your whatever you're playing breathe within the time. I think that's one of the hardest things for drummers to figure out when they're playing with a metronome, is to how to make it sound natural and how to make it have an identity. Your beat needs to have an identity within that click. Sometimes you become a little too mechanical when you're playing with a metronome because you're so focused on keeping time with it, where once you become so comfortable with it, you can really start to add a lot of breath in between your beat within the metronome keeping your time.
Every band is different. It's hard to say what's right for any one band or style or anything. Like there's really no rules. There's no anything. It's whatever works.
Yeah, so everything was done to a click track. You know, and also Dustin had been used to recording. I mean, everything he's ever recorded before that was with a click track. So I think that was one of the main deciding factors in doing it for this record.
So by the time I was in Night Demon, I'd been playing to a click track for like, I don't know, 10 years, 11 years. And I had it down to a science because when I was in New Liberty early on, I played with the click track all the time. Practice, live, studio. It didn't matter. I recorded the whole New Liberty self-titled album by myself in the studio with the producer because we couldn't afford to have everybody in the studio that day. And I had the songs memorized to the click. So I recorded the album by myself. You know, being that is the industry standard to play with a click, the guys, Brent and Jarvis, wanted me to play to a click track because John, their drummer at the time, couldn't play to the click. So that was concerning for them to have a drummer that couldn't play to a click track because it's industry standard. When we started to kind of rehearse for the recording, you know, we found all of the tempos that we wanted, you know, based on certain feels. You know, each song had its own tempo and time. We really worked on the timing of all that. And, you know, we were happy with the Run for Your Life sessions when they were done. I think that they just wanted to be a professional band, and, you know, they were getting ready to be signed to a label, and they wanted it to be perfect.
I hear a voice screaming in the night, a desperate cry from the grave. Heavy breathing, nothing is in sight. I try to make my escape. Madness takes over my mind. I'm going insane. In the dark corners you will find the questions remain. Save me now, 'cause I'm losing all control. Save me now, death is knocking at my door. Save me now, Lucifer has got a hold. My soul is gonna burn in flames.
And I can't remember what the place was called, but it was somewhere in Germany, and Jarvis could probably help with this. We played at this priest's, it was like a youth center, and we had, I think it was like maybe our I don't know if it was our first time there or our second time there. I think we only played once there. But we would show up and we would like drink like quarter beers. It was like a quarter you would donate for the youth center, and we just drank beers all night. I know the 2 times that we were there, I got like shit-faced. And it was after we had played in this little town and for this priest's youth club, and the next morning, because we were all sleeping on like cots in the middle of this giant room. And this is something distinctly that I remember about Brent, but when he would wake up in the morning, you could tell he was awake because he would just move his feet back and forth. Like his legs wouldn't move, but his feet would move. His toes would move and his feet would move. It was weird. But I always knew when Brent was awake because I could see his feet moving. And he was sitting there and I saw his feet, and then he had his arms behind his head. And this was, I don't know, we were on the tour after we had recorded, and it was like my first tour in Europe, I think. And we were playing shows, and we could only play so many songs because we only knew so many songs at that time. And he was like, you know, it's not the way it's supposed to be. He's like, the album's not done. This isn't the album. And we were like, what are you talking about, dude? I was like, we were like, it sounds amazing. It's great. He's like, yeah, I don't like the click. We're like, really? He's like, yeah, it's just not. No. He's like, it's not the album. It's not what we're going to give them. And to give Brent some credit, he really, had a good foresight at times. As much as he was lazy and whatnot, he did take those moments to reflect. He was good at that. He was good at, being quiet in a big group. He never spoke too much unless he was hammered. Then he was a badass. But, other than that, he was really reflecting on the album. And to Jarvis and I, we were just like, you're out of your mind. It's a great sounding album. And, he's just like, it's just not it. It doesn't have enough energy. It's stock. It's not what it's supposed to be.
Run for Your Life sessions were recorded in the fall to the winter of 2013. We went on tour in Europe, our first tour of Europe in 2014, and had had handed in this record to SPV Records, to Ollie Hahn, our great A&R man there, legendary A&R man. And we had a meeting in Hanover, and we're sitting on the rooftop of the record company. They have this beautiful building. It was left over, I think, from like the World Expo came to Hanover one year. And it's kind of like the Olympics. Like, they build these amazing structures, do this big convention, and they just kind of leave. And stuff's just there. They don't dismantle it and take it apart or anything. They just kind of leave it as a gift to the city, good or bad. But this building's incredible. And so they had like a restaurant on the rooftop, which, at this time, this early in our career, we're like, oh, wow, we've made it. We're being wined and dined, by the record company. There's a fucking restaurant on the rooftop. So we're there eating lunch, and Ollie's like, so the album. And we're like, yeah. And he's like, the songs are incredible. And we're like, oh, thanks so much. He's like, but I don't know about the recording. And he was basically kind of telling us what we had already felt, that, this recording that we did with Armand, Run for Your Life was the album title. 9 songs, did not include Mastermind or Screams in the Night. They weren't even written yet. And it had Chalice 15, which was a re-recorded version of the Chalice. So, he's not wanting to insult us, and he's just kind of showing that he really cares about the band. And he was basically telling us what we had already thought, right? So we had no money. We had spent so much time doing this record. We were under pressure. It's not something you want to just go back and redo. The thing is, we recorded the album to a click track, and there's all kinds of extra rhythm guitars. We just wanted to make a big album. We thought, we made this EP that was basically a demo in one shot, And now that we've got these record labels putting out a full-length record, and we're on tour and we're taking this seriously, let's be a professional band now. Let's do this right. Let's do this how the other bands do it, right? But Ollie's take was, look, the reason I signed you guys, the reason I loved you guys was because of that EP, was because you fucking did it in one shot. It's the raw energy of the band, and I just saw you guys live for the first time at the Keep It True Festival, and you blew everyone's minds. Where's that? What happened to that? That's not what I signed up for, right? And we're like, man, you're completely right. Thanks for letting us know, your take. And that kind of pushed us over the edge to go, okay, look, let's take a little bit more time on this record, and let's go back and revisit this.
And at that point in time, the decision was made to re-record it. And I think it was the right decision.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm the devil wearing white. Come with me, take my hand. I'll lead you to the promised land. Drink from the chalice, the unholy grail. Drink from the chalice, I give you everlasting life. Don't be afraid of temptation.
And it's kind of funny because I feel like things back then moved a lot faster. So anyway, we do this European tour, we come back home, and immediately we're like, we need to redo this album. So I think Brent came up with the opening riff for Screams in the Night. We started working on Mastermind together. We kind of fleshed those out and kind of demoed those songs in our practice space. And I think Armand was, maybe he can answer this, but I can't remember if he was just busy doing stuff or maybe we just decided to go with Roger Camaro because, what are we going to do? Go back in together. Armand put a lot of work into this record, and we just fucking shelved it, right? I mean, like, are we going to go back to the same formula, or it's like at a certain point, the wind comes out of your sails and you lose that kind of motivation that you need, right? So it wasn't anything personal for sure. A lot of the decisions that were made that resulted in that album sounding the way it did were decisions from the band. It wasn't Armand's fault. I mean, he actually made it sound really good. I think that it was probably more of that. I don't recall 100%, but I do believe it was probably more than that. And so Roger and Armand have actually been very close friends since we were kids. Roger and Armand, they actually started recording at the same time. So we were all in high school, and those were the two guys that recorded. And back then, home recording it wasn't really a thing, man. You might have had like a 4-track cassette recorder or something, but none of us really knew how to do that. And those guys kind of came up together. Roger moved to Irvine after high school, and Armand started a studio called the Ghost Chamber with our friend Joe Rivas, which was in an office. It was in a law office in downtown Ventura, above the Ventura Theater, the Ventura Concert Theater, and and I was working at the Ventura Theater at the time. I basically lived there. And I used to go up, there was a kitchen in the back, and there was all these walk-in freezers, and there was this little attic that you can go up in. And then there were these stairs to the roof. And I used to go up on the roof and then hop through the window of the law office, and I would be in their studio. But yeah, so those guys, we were all friends. And Roger, just so you know, Roger was the drummer in No Motive when I was the bass player. So a lot of incestuous stuff going on here, right? But those two guys, they started recording when we were really young, and they started doing it by recording their own bands, and then other bands would start coming to them. So they kind of came up together through the years. So I mean, we're talking 30 years now, and they're both still doing it, and they're at the top of their game now. So going to Roger wasn't something that, I was going to hurt Armand's feelings. He got paid, he did his job, and, he was happy to see us do the record that we wanted to do, and he was fully supportive of that. And so we went up to a place called Bright Mountain that summer, and Bright Mountain is in Keene, California, which is technically the mountain above Tehachapi. I'm not expecting anybody to know where this is, but look it up on a map. It's a pretty interesting place. And our friend Joe Martin he has a beautiful house at the top of the hill. It's completely isolated, and he built a home studio in the garage. It's a very, very small control room and a pretty small live room. So we just went up there with our gear, plugged in our live gear. We were obviously very rehearsed with the songs because we had been playing them on tour. We had already basically recorded an album of it, and we were ready to go. So within the span of 3 days, we tracked that album, and there you go. We had it. We had it done. We go up and do this album with Roger in 3 days. We go back home, and immediately we're planning our first major U.S. tour with Raven. On this previous tour that we were on in Europe in the spring of 2014, we had hooked up with them in Spain, and we ended up stuck backstage with no ride in the middle of nowhere. The festival shuttles had stopped running, and we just had no idea how to get to our hotel. We had met them the year prior in 2013. We played 3 shows with them and Diamond Head in Los Angeles, Santa Ana, and Las Vegas. And we hit it off. We've been friends ever since. But so this is kind of a big deal. This is our first major tour. Raven takes Metallica on their first tour. Now they're taking us on our first tour. So we're kicking it into high gear. We've got things to do. By the way, this tour was booked by me and John Gallagher from Raven. There was no agency involved. So there was a lot of work to do. And we were kind of poor and starving at that time. So we didn't have time to sit there and, spend another 3-4 months making an album. We had to go in and do it. Not only that, the release date was supposed to be January of 2015. And we were in a position where it's like we had to hand these masters in, and we had to, the record company had to have enough time to set up the marketing for this and the PR and the actual pressing itself of vinyl records and CDs and distribution and everything. We had to do music videos. And simultaneously, while this is happening, we have no we only have a record company that's representing us in Europe and the UK, and that's SPV Steamhammer Records, who I've been speaking about. We had no record label in the United States, North America, the rest of the world, right? So this was something that we were actively working on. And at one point, I just told Ollie, I said, man, you guys have distribution worldwide. Why don't you just sign us for the entire world? We can't have this album just come out in Europe and the UK. And, to his credit, he said, I don't want you to be mad at me. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, we have like 2 employees working in the U.S. It's a large territory. You're a U.S. band. You need to be with a label like a Metal Blade or a Prosthetic Records or something like this, And so I thought, okay, fair enough. I appreciated that respect and honesty. So we submitted to Metal Blade Records. We were turned down 3 times. 3 times. And it was finally just like, stop asking us, right? I got a call one day from my friend Jim Mills, who I used to work with in the late 90s, early 2000s, who was a marketing director at Metal Blade at the time. And he said, hey, Marco Barbieri just became the president of Century Media Records. And I said, who's that? And he said, dude, he did A&R at Metal Blade. Remember Marco? And I was like, oh, yeah. So we were in this situation, and so I said, is there any way you can get Marco out to a show? And actually, Marco ended up booking us in Las Vegas at his festival called Doom in June. It was a doom metal festival. We played Doom in June. Marco loves it, agrees to sign us. So it felt amazing, And I was so excited and just grateful, You've given me this opportunity that I've wanted my whole life. And in exchange, I promise to do the work, to do whatever it takes. That's my commitment to this. And do everything I possibly can to serve the fans and to serve the other members of the band and the organization, and to be somebody that's dependable, that people can always count on when it comes to Night Demon. And that's my commitment. And that I made that then, and more than 10 years later, I feel like I'm living that truth. Making this record and having the backing of so many people that I never thought we would even get in the door with, really meant everything to us.
Did they make the right decision by shelving these recordings? I think they did. The final version of what ended up being Curse of the Damned sounds much more like Night Demon, and it definitely has more energy behind it, more feel, more swing. Not that you can't achieve those things with a click track, but they definitely made the right choice here in redoing it, for sure. And who knows what would have happened if this was the final version that came out. I don't think we can really say. I find it always very difficult to go back and say, what if Bon Scott sang on Back in Black, or Paul Di'Anno sang on Number of the Beast? There's AI recordings of these things, or not really recordings, but there's AI renders of these things, and you've listened to them and you say, that could have been kind of cool. But I mean, after all this time, it's just, you can't unhear what the final version was. And like I said, the history is what it is. But like I said, I do think they made the right choice in redoing it. And I don't think at the end of the day, they would have made as many fans with this record if it had come out like this. But I don't think that would have even meant that Night Demon wouldn't have become a successful band because of it. It's, who knows? All we can say is we definitely got the better version of Curse of the Damned when it came out. So we can at least all be grateful for that.
Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we're going to dig into these Run For Your Life versions of the songs, and you can hear how different they are from their final form. The Run For Your Life album, recorded, unheard, shelved until now, finally released on the Curse of the Damned Ultimate Edition on CD and vinyl. CurseDamned.com for info on that. And be sure to check out nightdemon.net for all things Night Demon, including Curse 10-year anniversary tour dates, axe-wielding Eugene coming to life from the cover art in action figure form. If you're liking these episodes, give us a rating. It'll really help us out. That's it for this week. Curse of the Damned at 10. Until next week, this is Nesbitt signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. Head over to nightdemon.net, click on the subscriber tab, and sign up to access exclusive weekly bonus content. If you would like to donate to support the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast, you can do so through PayPal at paypal.me/nightdemonmetal. Additionally, if you have not already done so, please subscribe, like, rate, and review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All hail, Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners. This is Dusty Squires chiming in to tell you about my brand new signature sticks from the London Drumstick Company. I've dreamt of having my very own drumsticks ever since I was a wee lad, and LDC made that a possibility for me. Founded in 2016 in London, England, the birthplace of heavy metal, the London Drumstick Company has trailblazed a path through the music industry and taken the drummer world by storm. When I met them for the first time, they knew their product was going to withstand the beatings of a Night Demon show. They took the time to work with me on getting everything just right. The balance and weight of my sticks are the same no matter what, and the durability is bar none the best I've ever had. I know my sticks will last through the set night after night. I'm truly honored to work with a company that caters to their players the way LDC does. Their innovation and attention to detail is what separates them from the rest of the stick makers out there. Their custom stick sleeves are unbelievable and really make the entire presentation complete. Wait until you see the design they came up with for me. It blew my mind and was a surprise to say the least. They have all kinds of amazing swag, including hoodies, t-shirts, drummer shorts, drum keys, stick bags, towels, face masks, practice pads, and much, much more. Even if you're not a drummer, you can be a part of Demon history and order my brand new signature sticks direct from their website. How cool is that? And to top it off, the London Drumstick Company are giving an exclusive offer to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners. Go to londondrumsticks.co.uk and receive a 15% store-wide discount using promo code DEMONSTICKS. All capital letters, no spaces, Demon Sticks. DEMONSTICKS. I can't thank everyone there enough for the opportunity to be a part of their family and for them trusting me with their amazing products. See you metal maniacs on the road very soon. And yes, the wood chips will be flying.
Greetings, boils and ghouls. This is your comrade, the Crypt Keeper here, reporting dead from the sanctuary of the strange. Tonight's macabre myth is a fright-filled feature, one overflowing with monsters, madness, and magic.
Visit our website at monstersmadnessandmagic.com to stay up to date on all the dark dealings within the sanctuary of the strange. Enjoy the show.
Hey metalheads, I'm Mark and I host the Metal Forge. Let me tell you about the show. The Metal Forge features the best underground metal from all over the world. We spend every week with a different artist with interviews, in-depth conversations, and most of all, the music. We also feature audience interactivity where you can submit your questions to the upcoming guests. New episodes are out every Friday at noon Eastern Time at metalforgeradio.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all-ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
Okay, metalheads, you've been complaining that there has not been a channel that plays all of the heavy metal videos from past, present, and future for years and years at this point. Well, that time is over. Heavy Metal Television is back. HeavyMetalTelevision.net is the website. Go there. You can see videos playing 24/7, 365, all the time. All the best from the old school, the new school, and everything in between. Check it out, HeavyMetalTelevision.net. It is where the metal is.